It's good to live where other people think of as a vacation place, which is what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I, you know,
But
uh, I think about that back in the day, and when Bill Draper pulled the trigger and made a small investment in eSky in our Series A, and like that unlocked the floodgates for everyone else. I mean, we had like our, you know, wealthy friend group and
yeah,
different,
the industry people.
not the tech people. We didn't have
No,
like we didn't have Silicon Valley. And when Bill Draper wrote a small check, that unlocked it, and that's what ended up getting us Hambrick and Quist. Remember? Yeah. And we're already live, so we're just rolling with it. We're live on the Smoke Trail with the one and only Andrew Lobo, longtime dear friend of Smoke, and it's been a long time coming. We
34 years, Holmes. That's
really,
over half of our lifetimes.
yes, it is. Well, no, well, depends on how long you think we live, but this in this realm, in this.
As you will, one of your pre-questions was about spirituality, and as I said, I have nothing against it, but I'm not a spiritual person. I was
Okay.
born and I'll die.
Well, it's interesting because your answers, one could be very spiritual with those answers, or not apparently. So that's okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Vive la différence, as the French say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the smoke trail is not just about spirituality, but it is about being true to self and true to our core being and living right and good and for whatever we have. And I think we can have a good conversation around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
34 years ago, I think Kathleen Turner came to both of us and said, "You got to meet Andrew Lobo. He worked for Seagram, and she said, "You got to meet Smoke. He's in the liquor business." And so
Good.
there was a friendship struck by someone who connected us from the alcohol industry, and at that time we were a fairly good size Seagram distributor, and you had just left Seagram to go to business school to
Correct.
broaden your abilities beyond accounting. I remember distinctly that your mission or your stated objective was, I already know finance, I already know accounting. I want to be able to get into marketing and other areas of business and broaden my appeal.
Yep. Absolutely. And ended up in HR without forgetting any of the other stuff, which has influenced me certainly in terms of people picking and choosing career paths.
Yeah.
Um, in other words, what you think or plan may not happen. Um, but but that's exactly right. No, as I said, accounting was a great place to start. It's a language of business. It's always useful to be able to compare um, financials for any company across industries and across the world. But ultimately, accounting is about looking backwards, and I wanted to do stuff that was looking forwards.
But as you say, I'm a huge fan of Scott Adams, who's the creator of Dilbert. Remember, I don't know if you
Yep,
know the cartoon, but
I know. Yep, I know.
I'm a huge fan of his, and he's got a whole thing, in one of his books, or his philosophy of talent stack. And it's not, I don't think he invented it, but he really framed it in a great way, which is if you are able to add different skill sets to your talent stack, before you know it, you're in the top 1% of all people capable of contributing because you have these different layers of ability. And I think that's a great example. Like, you had the accounting, you had your CPA, you knew finance, and then, came back. A good reason to go to business school is broaden your talent stack and add other layers to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And business school was the way to pivot. It might have been difficult if I had not gone to business school to pivot into strategy consulting directly.
Yeah.
The business school allowed me then to do the strategy consulting pivot, which then led me to do some marketing consulting work, some internal consulting, and then that led to HR. And
Well,
the beauty of
you're skipping a huge swath of entrepreneurship where we worked together on some projects. So
well, I didn't skip because when I first got into HR, that was Coca-Cola, and I left Coca-Cola to start eSky with you.
that's
So
right.
that was the next
True.
step.
I forget when you had the director comma or director of human capital planning. The comma was important for some reason in the Coke.
Well, comedy. Yes, my title was director, comma, human capital planning, because I had no direct reports, but I was director level. If I had direct reports, it would have been director of human capital planning.
Okay.
So yes, very important.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember that nuance. It was pretty funny. Well, so one of the cool things about your talent stack, Andrew, is your background, and you grew up. Your family, first of all, were Pakistani Christians that migrated to the UK, right, originally, and so
On my
you
father's side, yep,
your father's side, and you grew up in the UK until you guys moved to New Jersey for high school.
correct.
Okay.
Well, for 3 months of high school,
Oh, just the end.
yeah, just the end, yeah. And I'll
Okay.
never forget because I had to literally learn a year's worth of U.S. history um, in those 3 months. That was the one thing they wouldn't give me credit from my education in England because we didn't really study U.S. history in England. So, but this is a joke for anyone who might get sensitive. But luckily, there isn't that much U.S. history. So,
No, I mean, well, no, not compared to England for sure. You
right.
know, and they don't like to, recount their losses either.
Okay, I shall refrain from following this tangent any further.
Okay. All right. But I do think, interesting cultural background, having spent a lot of time in your formative years in England and then jumping into the US and, jumping almost right out of that, you went to college and went to St. Peter's College in New Jersey.
Yep.
I remember you telling me why it was such a great platform or experience for you versus trying to go to some big name university.
Yeah. And it's something that's informed my thoughts on universities ever since. St. Peter's College is not really very well known nationally at all. I don't know whether it's on any kind of national rankings of any sort, other than it's a Jesuit school like Notre Dame. um, but you know who did know who St. Peter's College was? Every one of the big eight at the time accounting firms.
Ah,
And they all actively recruited out of St. Peter's College. And St. Peter's College had an honors program where if you did well, you essentially got an internship with one of the big eight. And so I did well. I got my internship with one of the big eight, and that led to my accounting career. And so to me, the prestige of a college might be important, but it probably isn't as important as is that college well known to a bunch of local businesses.
it's really a practical, view of a college education, and you've got a couple kids that are now out of college age and or beyond and out in the workforce, and my four who have all successfully traversed that terrain and gotten out. But a lot of kids, I think, over the especially the last couple decades, who, even going back to when we went to school, who, went to college with no specific purpose in mind, borrowed a lot of money, maybe to get a big name on their resume or whatever, but they weren't really thinking resume, and then got out and realized, like, how do I even pay for this? How much this like it's completely upside down. The economics of higher education have gotten totally out of whack.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be careful. I mean, one of the things I notice in America is again, I've been here more than twice as long as I was in England, but that was my formative years.
Yeah,
Um, but what I noticed is the number one god status in America appears to me to be physicians, but the number two is professors. And the idea that anyone could say anything negative about colleges is, it's almost people pathologize that as something bad. That your statement is right on. I say, is college useful? For a lot of people, it is. Is it a positive ROI? For a lot of people, it is. But for a reasonable number of people, it may not be.
yeah,
And then, oh, by the way, that's not even taking into account what's going to happen in the future regarding AI.
yeah,
Um, you've got people thinking about going to college now, wondering what the heck's going to be on the other side of this. You've obviously got people currently in the workforce wondering what the heck's going to become of my role. And so those roles which require hands and brains, historically they've been called trades, are going to be more and more interesting all of a sudden, and they don't need a college degree. I got a friend who was telling me a 10-week certification will qualify you to be a wind turbine maintenance person, and the people that graduate those programs get instantly hired at 75 grand a year.
yeah,
This subject of college is kind of the thing that I sort of like to do, which is question orthodoxy. There was a book a long time ago called The Wisdom of Crowds.
mm.
And while most, if not everything in that book was true, it doesn't always mean that what the crowd thinks is right.
Oh, we know that from the investment crowd.
Well, yes. And then you can, there's many examples of the crowd not being right. I mean,
Yeah,
apartheid in South Africa, for God's sake. So, but I like to do that. I mean, I actually use it as an active analytical technique. It's like, what's everyone else say? Let me take the direct opposite and make the case for that. And then if I can, great. But if I can't, at least I've tested the
yeah.
opposite.
Well, that's one of the, I think, hallmarks of actual intelligence. And we've had a lot of years of debating various ideas, concepts, you know, ideas for new businesses, ideas for just lots of things. And you said it. I think you're the one that emphasized this, that made me remember it, which was the whole what is the purpose of debate? It's progress, not victory.
Yeah. My
I don't
second
know.
favorite quote
Yeah,
by
but
Joseph Joubert.
okay. And I use it all the time, and I never
Yeah.
attribute it to him or you. But
And by the way,
I
just to
do
be
here.
clear,
I give you credit here for
I
sure.
appreciate that. I do appreciate that. And by the way, that's not just Joubert that said that, right? So first of all, you've got Hegel's dialectic, right? Very famous philosopher who
Yes.
basically said without revolution there could be no progress. Then you've got Socrates that learned everything he knew by arguing, and again, arguing in the philosophical sense, right? You've got the fact that the Socratic method is used in every law school case ever, and the vast majority of business school cases,
Yeah.
right? Which is, again, argument. It's the most efficient and useful way to actually get learning progress. And so, yes, it's worth emphasizing, I think.
Yeah, and this is not a rant about like society in general. I actually think anyone who's legitimately comes at any issue with an open mind and a degree of integrity with their intelligence, welcomes debate. They, we want to know, because I want to know, like, what are the different angles of this issue that can inform me that I may make the best choice, to make this best decision in regard to whatever the topic is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this one isn't by Joubert. This is by Lobo. I say the loser of an argument is actually the winner because they're the only one that's actually learned something.
Ah, that's a good one. I mean, as long
I should,
as
I should, I, I should look it up just in case somebody else has said it before, but I think I did make that one up.
well, since uh, since thoughts are actual forms, thoughts are just energy, right? And they're actual thought forms, right? There's a whole book on thought forms. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's really interesting. Um, Alice Bailey wrote a bunch of interesting books back in the early 1900s, and one of them is on thought forms, and it's basically talking about every thought, every emotion is basically an energy, and there's an actual form, and they in this book, you can be a skeptic or not, but it's like they actually had a bunch of test cases where people had different types of thoughts like gratitude and love or anger and hate, and they had some people who had the ability to kind of see, I don't know if they could see auras, they could see, kind of the energetic footprint around people, and they were able to actually describe these, and they have illustrations in the book of different types of thought forms, you know and as you can imagine, thoughts of gratitude, thoughts of love, thoughts of kindness, are beautiful, symmetrically shaped, beautiful, and nice colors. And then thoughts of anger, jealousy, guilt, shame are usually kind of, bad forms, and, irregular forms and weird colors. And it was really interesting, fascinating, actually, that was actually a book that was out.
Well, I mean, the whole thing about thinking. I mean, I said that the purpose of debate is progress, not victory, was my second favorite quote. My favorite quote is thinking is the hardest work there is, which probably explains why so few people do it. And that was Henry Ford. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Well, because, and this is a good area of illumination. The vast majority of people, and if you I'm thinking kind of David Hawkins, Power versus Force, and some of that. I think I mentioned it to you,
mhm,
but I've become a big student of his. And in his book Power versus Force, and in subsequent books, he did a lot of analysis, and he basically came up with approximately 80% of the population lives below the 200 level of consciousness, which in his scale, there's different ways of looking at it, but they all kind of match up, no matter all the different schools. They're kind of starting at low emotions like shame and guilt, and going up to anger is more stronger, and until you get to neutrality, and then you get above that. And 80% of the population at the time of that writing were below 200. And what that means is they are living as a mechanical, animalistic entity, which basically has literally no free will, which we'll talk about that. But you have no free will if you're only responsive to the stimuli that come to you, which is in another way of saying lack of
mhm,
thinking, like,
mhm, mhm.
in another, from another lens. But if we are unable to create a separation between a stimuli and a response, then we're no different than an animal or a machine that just responds automatically by our programming, by our emotion, by our feelings. But if we can create that separation, even at just a little daylight, you can take your time, look at all the options, select the optimal option from what information you have, And that would be to me a definition of thinking the way you're talking about it.
Yeah, and I am, you know, thinking from an overall consciousness standpoint is one thing. As I think about thinking, it's kind of, yeah, I try and channel my stuff into sort of business more than life, um, which obviously they're not 100% separate, but and so the lack of what I would call thinking that I've seen in my career is um, well, it's not surprising anymore. And I'll give you two quick examples where you can have evidence of lack of thinking. The first is whenever somebody says, let's not reinvent the wheel. It's like, the wheel's been reinvented about 17 times. Like, it used to be a piece of rock, and then it was a piece of wood, and then they added a rim to it, and then they put spokes on it, and on and on and on and on. So somebody saying that let's not reinvent the wheel means I don't actually think of a way to
Right.
make this better. The other one, of course, is we tried that before, it didn't work. If you think about a strategy or an opportunity,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, why didn't it work? Was it the strategy or opportunity? Was it the execution? Was it the macroeconomic environment? Was it the lack of technology to enable it? Right. So just saying you tried it before it didn't work, again, to me is a common um, example of lack of thinking.
Yeah. And while I have dealt with large corporations my whole career, always from the outside. Now, sometimes at a high level, sometimes, negotiating with, doing deals with, being in business with, but I was always on the outside for different reasons we could talk about. But um, you you lived a bunch of your career inside those giant entities, both you know inside the actual corporations doing stuff like Coca-Cola and other big companies, and also in the advisory role, where you were in big organizations advising those corporations, right? So you lived in that corporate environment for a long time, where you people, I think people who aren't in business, and which this is a little bit. I mean, I think this our audience crosses over of various people, and certainly crosses into the corporate world. But there's a lot of people that are not in that world that just look at it and say, "Oh, all these big corporations, they have all the power, they have all the knowledge, they have all the resources, and they just do whatever they want." But the reality is, inside those organizations, it's why Dilbert was so successful, and it is so funny because Scott was in big corporations, and he just started making commentary in the form of cartoons around the idiocy of those big organizations.
Oh,
And
and look. Let's be clear. Jerry Seinfeld's success is 100% based on him seeing the humor in everyday things,
yeah,
right? So it doesn't mean those things are, bad. It means that you can look at them in a humorous light.
yeah,
They call it observational humor, right? You're observing life, you're observing behavior. And so it's the same thing inside of a big corporation. And oh, by the way, I learned this actually at East Sky. You don't need a big corporation to have corporate politics. You just need three people.
yeah, yeah. Any small group of people can screw anything up, I guess, or can create drama around it, right?
Yes, he didn't invite me to his meeting. Whatever.
Wow. Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, that's good stuff. Well, on the AI thing and replacing jobs, I just saw something where somebody at a big law firm said that they're seeing uh, AI output in some of these specialized AI programs that are kind of designed for law. They're seeing like output that is superior better research, better reason, better kind of checks every box than any of their 2 year recent law school graduates are doing. Great stuff. I'm not talking about like just general chat, but they have specialized environments where they're loading all the case history and everything else.
Look, AI is following the same kind of dynamics as most things, whether it's computers, whether it, remember we weren't meant to have paper anymore, the internet. And that means that it is over exaggerated by some, it is under exaggerated by others. And the two case examples of that, of each, or the one case from each of those that I've seen, and by the way, it might all be different by the end of today because it's changing. But, agentic AI, which is, where AI will control the whole process or autonomously, 24/7, yada, 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 is being overhyped. It's not doing as well as everybody's saying it will do. And will it ever do that? I wouldn't bet against it. But right now, there's problems. But on the flip side, generative AI, I mean, I hear these people saying, oh, it's not creative, and oh, it doesn't know how to write. Well, it writes better than a hell of a lot of the people I know. And creative, I had some fun just the other day. I said, pretend I'm a local heating and air conditioning company.
Yeah.
Write me a slogan. And it came back with, have you heard the term hell freezes over? We can make that happen.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. No, and I think it's great for like ideation, brainstorming, any topic, and if you frame the question right, that's a skill. Like, how do you ask it properly? You can quickly generate a tremendous and good list of ideas that then can be explored further.
Well, and you actually skipped over a word that I think is absolutely critical when it comes to generative AI, and that's the word quickly.
Yeah.
In other words, people love to go on about the hallucinations. Oh, it's an error. Oh my goodness, all the hallucinations. Guess what? You can have 5 hallucinations, fix them, still have the final product done in a tenth of the time it would have taken you to do all by yourself. The speed with which it does everything is a humongous component of the value, not just the accuracy. And oh, by the way, in the same way that you can look at and fix hallucinations, you can also expand the sort of opportunity case. Like, I don't have the time to look at 10 different options of something, maybe 2 and 3. AI can look at 10 options, no problem. And then I just have to say which one's the best. But anyway.
And I think also, it does have hallucinations, but that's because it's been trained, it's garbage in, garbage out. It's been trained on garbage. But as I'm seeing more and more, walled garden versions where, companies or people, just individuals, you can take chat and you can create your own little thing. I have a friend who loaded up. He took the Harvard negotiation class. He did a bunch of other negotiation stuff. He had all this material, and he loaded it all into his own little negotiating pod. And he's been using it to help him with deals and like, what should I think of? And it's like lightning fast, giving him quick lists of like, here's all the things that to think about.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because people are almost personifying it, and I probably do as well when I'm talking to it, by the way.
Yeah.
But the when they talk about hallucinations, and you say, well, garbage in, garbage out, a lot of the hallucinations come from inaccurate reporting. So, for example, 4 or 5 months ago, IBM announced that because of AI, they could see up to 8,000 jobs being impacted in the next few years. All of the business periodicals and regular periodicals printed AI is going to lay off 8,000 people due to AI. And so when I asked about that 5 months later, that's what AI told me. Now, it just so happens that I asked AI about that about a week after IBM did announce they were laying off 200 people because of AI. And so I was like, okay. But again, instead of criticizing the original journalism, it's like criticizing AI.
Well, we know, and I mean, I've been in the press more than most, and you've been around that quite a bit, and we know how stories get written, and so back in the day when we did East Guy, and we got a tremendous amount of press around that venture, which was almost universally positive. But we know how those stories got written, and we realized that, and this is not a slam against all journalists, but we realized that most journalists at the time, and maybe probably today too, but were kind of lazy. They didn't want to do a lot of work. So if we would write the story for them, or in essence give them most of the story in chunks, and then let them know that they can basically use whatever they want and it can be theirs, and we would get what we wanted. There's a thing called the gel man amnesia effect. Have you heard of this?
Hmm.
It's basically, when I read something in, say, the New York Times, I might, I probably won't, but let's say the Wall Street Journal, I might believe the story because I don't know it's about the healthcare industry, or it's about some topic I'm not an expert in, and I read the story and it looks plausible, and I'm like, oh, that I believe that headline.
Right.
But if it's my industry and I read it, I know exactly who wrote it, where it came from, and I know what's wrong, what's right, and it's called the gel man amnesia effect. We tend to believe stories that we see without it doing any kind of like critical analysis, if it's something that we're not around. But if it's something
Right.
we know it's wrong, like, that's a false story, that's completely inaccurate, we know where they got that information, it's not right. And if you think about it, it's kind of across every topic. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And the irony is, but that statement is currently the experts around AI.
yeah, no, for
I,
sure.
I don't think there is one, including Sam Altman, by the way.
Yeah, everybody's spinning their take on it. I mean,
Yeah,
they have deep knowledge about what they're doing, and also they have gaps, and they're just making it up as they go.
invested interest in promoting a certain kind of story.
Michael, the author Michael Crichton,
Yeah.
he's the one that coined that term.
Oh, okay. That guy's interesting. He's he's done a lot of sort of books that are deeper than a surface level reading would convey.
You know who I've become a fan of is Walter Kern. Do you know that guy?
How do you spell that name?
I think
Last
it's
name?
Kirn or Kern. He wrote like Up in the Air, which became a movie, and some other. He's written some big novels, fiction, but about real life things. But he has a news platform with Michael Tiabi, and they criticize the news a lot. But he's got a really interesting take. But he's a writer first,
Right.
so I would say someone who thinks. You can't, like, one of the best things about writing, even if it's like in your journal, writing stuff, is it makes you think. It makes you have to understand something at a deeper level if you're going to write about it. Well, yeah, and it's same
What
thing
would help?
with teaching someone something, right? If we want to, if you teach someone something, you know whether you know it, and you learn it at a much deeper level when you try to
Absolutely.
explain something to someone, rather than just, oh, I got that, yeah, I understand it, I read it, it makes sense, but now, okay, now stand up in front of a group and explain that idea to someone.
Yeah.
It's a whole different level of knowledge.
Look, that takes me back, and something I've never ever forgotten, which is one of the reasons why I hope I write reasonably well, is I'll never forget O-level chemistry. And when you had to write up an experiment, and what you wrote had to be good enough that somebody who had never done the experiment could read what you wrote, repeat the experiment, and get the same result.
Yeah.
And that kind of clarity and conciseness is critically important, I think.
Oh, for sure. You know, that makes me think of like just the null hypothesis and coming up with a thesis of whatever thing you're talking about, whatever it is, right?
Right.
Coming up with, okay, disprove the null hypothesis to prove, to you know, create evidence that,
Validate the idea, yeah.
yeah. But like that scientific method and that level of thinking, boy, I don't think that's being taught a lot.
No, it's not. And I literally recently wrote a LinkedIn post, and I called it the Revenge of the Humanities, obviously
Ah,
tongue in cheek, right? And it's like it's like AI is very, very, very good at everything math, engineering, calculus,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I.e., all the non-humanity stuff. What AI isn't as good at is the more human stuff. And so, analysis, rather than being math, is actually what humanities students do. For example, write an essay about the character arc of Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice. Right? So to do that task, you have to read a whole bunch of information. Out of that information, you've got to select just the information that's going to be useful to your hypothesis. Then you have to actually put that together in a coherent and concise form to convey your idea and your
Yeah.
hypothesis to the reader. And that kind of analysis is going to be continue to be very, very useful in business in the age of AI because
Honestly, I think that's something that it could do pretty well. Let's try it. All right, I have Grok right here.
okay,
I'm just gonna as an experiment because I don't know that I read that book in high school, so I don't remember anything. So what the question is? Give us the character arc of
of
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth
All
in
right,
Pride and Prejudice.
give us the character arc of Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice, and then who is it? Who are we explaining it to?
Your This is a paper that you want to submit to a professor.
In the form of a paragraph that would be representative of a paper I would present to a professor who is deeply knowledgeable of Pride and Prejudice. Okay, we'll just see what Grok comes up with, just as a fun live experiment.
And is Gruck your AI
I use
choice?
chat and Grok a lot, and it's already done, by the way. But so I'm going to answer it. But what I do is, and I play around a little bit with the Google one, but I haven't. I just it's a amount of time factor. It's like they're all like leapfrogging each other. I'm enjoying Grok more now. Like it seems to have really stepped up, but they keep advancing. But what I'll do is if I'm working on something, like say I have a client in my M&A practice where I need to understand an industry and I'm trying to come up with options of who might be a strategic buyer, right? That's a common thing in my world. It's so great in terms of speed. And I'll ask it very precisely in chat, get an answer. I'll ask it precisely in Grok, get an answer. And then I'll take those answers and I'll put them in each other and I'll say, hey, critique my thoughts on this and what am I missing? And all of a sudden and then I've got, whoa. And then I'll like, so it's next level by combining the things.
Right. Yeah. No. It's smart. I mean, I also do it. I use Yeah, I use minor perplexity, Claude, and chat. Um,
All right.
but yeah,
So you're the professor.
yeah.
Elizabeth Bennet, the vivacious and intellectually astute protagonist of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, embodies a complex interplay of wit, prejudice, and moral growth that critiques the Regency era constraints on women in marriage. As the second daughter in a family beset by entailment and social precariousness, Elizabeth distinguishes herself through her sharp observational acumen and irreverent humor, often deploying irony to navigate the absurdities of her milieu, evident in her playful banter with Mr. Darcy and her incisive dismissal of Mr. Collins' pompous proposal. And it goes on.
So it didn't answer the question.
I don't
I
know.
think discuss the arc of her character. That was the
Oh,
question.
did I ask it that right? I said, give us the character of Elizabeth. I didn't say.
Ah,
I'm
ah.
so all right. User error. I made a bad. Anyway, I'm not so sure. It's not good at
No,
that.
no, 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 no. But again, don't misunderstand. The ability to do that in something that isn't based on a book that already exists with 1,000 articles written about it. In other words, you're thinking about entering a new industry. Could you use Gen I to help you? Don't get me wrong, yes, but figuring out what prompts to write, what prompts to write about, right? Getting the information back from the prompts, knowing how to question the information. I mean, you obviously
Yeah.
do it yourself, but um, um, but that is the thing I'm talking about when I'm
Yeah.
talking
No, no,
about
I'm with you on that 100%. And that goes back to, the null hypothesis and understanding the scientific method,
yes,
understanding logic and basic reasoning. And so being able to critique what you're getting out and it's usually like third level of questioning that I end up getting really valuable
right.
stuff out of
It's
it.
iterative, yes, and again, I think, yeah, I don't know whether humanities people would like this, but I just think that humanities require a lot of analytical ability, and that type of analytical ability is going to become more and more useful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where if I'm telling young people where to learn logic, learn debate, learn the Socratic method,
Philosophy,
learn the
yeah,
null hypothesis and the scientific method, learn the ways of thinking, not what to think. And if you can learn that, you can do anything. And these tools make you a superhero, like literally with that mind and the ability at our fingertips that we have, to just access this stuff. You have the power of, it's I liken it to, like, if I had a grad student, almost an idiot savant grad student at my beck and call 24/7, who never gets tired and has infinite access to information at his fingertips, and I can tell it to do anything I want whenever I want. it still needs it still needs curation and guidance and massaging and back and forth. But I've got an army of those. It's the equivalent of having 1,000 of them.
and the other thing it has, by the way, is unlimited patience.
Yeah.
Because the number of times I'm talking to it and I'm like, oh, could you add this? And what about this? And I'm literally talking about sun flying, right? I was accurate. I do. I feel embarrassed. I'm like, when's it going to yell at me and say, why can't you structure your prompt at the beginning instead of adding all this crap?
I find myself being extra polite and
Yes.
saying thank you and please a lot.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's like somehow
It's a hedge.
my higher self knows that, like, one of these days this thing's gonna be in charge.
It's a
So
hedge.
I'm gonna be one of those ones it likes.
Yes. I was nice to you back in the day.
Yes. All right. That human was nice to me when they were in charge. I'm gonna let him
Yeah.
continue with his, like, whatever he does.
Totally. Totally. But the day when that struck me as this was one of the God, Boston. Who's the Boston company that does the robots?
Oh, Boston. Oh, yeah.
Boston Scientific?
Scientific. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll never forget, there was one where it was an upright humanoid robot, not the dog. And they were showing off its ability to sort of get up when it falls over.
Oh, yeah. And they're
This
hitting it.
guy was hitting it with a stick and making it fall over. And I felt sorry for the robot.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to be that guy. We might all get blamed for that.
The first time they put artificial intelligence in that robot, that guy's that.
Well, and I don't know if you saw, like, I saw a clip of, like, there's a Chinese robot that's like a wheel. It's it got a wheel with weapons on it, and it showed, like, it taken out, like, guys trying to fight it, and it just rolls around and comes back at you, and it has ability to, like, it's really a bad idea. Well, I guess, warfare, we now know from the Ukraine war, but, like, it's never going to be the same. I mean, they can send cheap drones, and it's never going to be man on man combat because the drones can take you out in 2 seconds.
It's funny you say that. I read something a few months ago that was just like, I'm interested in these kind of epochal things. So one that people have heard of is there was a time which was the last time that you ever picked up one of your kids. And if you'd known that at the time, what would happen.
Right.
This one is very different than that. It's the invention of the longbow.
Of the long what?
Of the longbow, the bow and arrow, the big one, that shot far distance, right? Was the first time that you didn't have to see someone's eyes before you killed them.
Ah.
And ever since then, weaponry has allowed you to kill from further and further away.
Yeah, now you can have, like, some kids that are gamers sitting in a bunker, um, you know, blowing stuff up or whatever. Yeah. And the scary thing is they remove the kids and it's just AI doing it against an enemy or whatever. It's kind of scary. It's, I don't know, because the problem is our ingenuity and inventiveness and advances in the material world, AI included, robotics, drones, all this stuff that's coming super fast, has been coming, has outpaced the level of humanity's consciousness growth. So we still have, I think it's actually the global consciousness is rising. That's my view today, is that more and more people are waking up. But, if it was 80-20, during Hawkins, power versus force in 95, is it 25, is it 80 or 75, 25 now? Or, it's still a huge majority are living in those low emotions, mechanical, no free will, just going with whatever the emotion is, following the crowd. And we are inventing ever more clever and, incredible technologies that can kill each other and harm each other. And so that is I'm in a very positive mindset in general, but it's a fact that the consciousness of humanity has not kept pace with the inventiveness of humanity. Like, we've got, when we created nuclear weapons, we weren't an advanced race. We were still a very primitive race that now could blow up whole cities and whole, swaths of people at once.
Reminds me of it might be an old joke, I don't know, but actually, I've heard how many people have heard it. It's if everyone knows their history of the Bible, they'll know that Satan used to be Michael, Archangel Michael, God's favorite angel, the most powerful angel. And the joke is that, God realized that Michael was getting too big for his britches, so he sent him down to hell. And Michael said, God, for old time's sake, can you just do me one favor before I go to hell? And God said, okay, what is it, Michael? And he said, well, you see that planet, the third one from the sun that you made in the universe? God says, yeah, Earth, yeah. No. I am not letting you rule Earth, Michael. And I said, no, 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 God, no. I was just going to ask if you could let the humans control Earth.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think there's some real truth to that. But the I guess the thing that on the smoke trail, the thing that I recognize, and I think your quotes in your little pre work that you did months ago were quite good. And I think the one thing you that one realizes at a certain level is the only person that we have any real control over is ourselves, and nothing else, no one else. I don't care who else. You don't really have and so all we can do is show up the way we want to show up, respond the way we would like aspire to respond, and be the being that we can be. And if we each did that, we'd have a perfect world, or we'd have a much greater world. It's everyone looking outside, projecting what they see wrong in the world on everyone else, and not taking ownership themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Look, that's sort of the reason why I'm drawn to um, Stoicism. I mean,
Yeah,
the phrase, worry about the stuff you can control.
yeah,
Okay, that's relatively recent, but it was the first person I know that actually wrote it 2,000 years ago was Marcus Aurelius.
yeah,
You know, it says, everything bad that happens to you is outside of you, right? But how you think about it is 100% controllable by you. Remember that, essentially.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it makes me think of like Viktor Frankl, and living in the Nazi death camp, and um, you know, man's search for meaning, and it was all about perspective. It was all about having a reason to live, and his perspective on that horrible condition that he found himself in, and the people that survived, that were in camp with him, were people that had some higher purpose of something to look forward to, something to think beyond, and it was all in how you know perceived and reacted to the horrible conditions that they were in.
yeah, yeah. And if you can do that there, then
Right.
that's pretty powerful stuff. And so you can certainly take the fact that your um, boss didn't understand something you said for its brilliance and uniqueness, and not let that affect you.
Yeah. It's much easier said than done, but it's absolutely doable. And it's really it's finding that inner compass. I love the Stoics too. I appreciate so much of their wisdom. One of my favorite quotes, which ties to some of the things that you mentioned, is nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart. That was Seneca. You know,
Right.
and being in gratitude, which that was you're in gratitude in a lot of ways, right? There's nothing more powerful than being in gratitude, because if in gratitude, actually the universe knows that, it recognizes it. It just like it's an energy.
Well, I take it into I make it into math. There's a fun little equation that somebody said, and there's some variations of this equation that said happiness equals consumption divided by desire, right? And so the problem is, of course, that that equation is a quotient, but most people look at trying to increase the numerator um, to increase the happiness, when it's actually much more impactful to reduce the denominator, which is desire. And, you know, Buddha, his fundamental thing when he sold all his stuff and went off around the world to find out why is there sadness and unhappiness and bad things in the world. And after a few years, he came back and he said, desire is the root of all the bad stuff. Now, he made exceptions, desire for peace and harmony and love is fine, but desire is sort of material stuff. Anyway, so then the
Well,
question,
the attachments, right?
yeah,
His point is the attachment to all this stuff.
yeah,
It's trying to
The,
you know,
the stuff that's not actually worth being attached to, though, that's the point. There's some
right.
stuff it's okay being attached to, but
Yeah, I think Buddha said no attachments, but that was to get enlightenment, full enlightenment, you know. Um, but my interpretation of that is there's a difference between not being attached to outcomes or just anything, but you can have preferences. So my preference is peace. My preference is, success, whatever.
right?
I'm not attached to any one thing, or I'm happy regardless of what happens. Like you said it in your career. I think for a total of 6 or 7 years, you had moments of unemployment where you were out of a job, and you were never, and I know because I was like with you and hanging out.
Yeah,
We were friends.
yeah.
That, you were always like, yeah, the right thing will come, and you never got, you were never anxious, really. You never were like, depressed or anything like that. You were like, okay, that next thing, but that's being unattached to the outcome, and something always came up that made sense.
Ultimately, yeah. But anyway, so going back though to gratitude. So if you do decide to reduce the denominator in that quotient, the easiest way to reduce desire is explicit gratitude, right? It's like realize everything you have, and it will make you desire less because the things you have, oh by the way, are more important than most of the other stuff. I would really love to have the Porsche 911 Turbo S. Not the friggin' GT3. That thing rides so harsh, I wouldn't want it. A nice plush Turbo S. I'm probably never going to have one. It's not going to hurt my life that I don't have it. But the things that I do have, I'll never have to worry about being thirsty, hungry, too hot, too cold.
Yeah.
I have people I love. I have people that love me. You know, lots of people don't have those things.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it's
and
kind of Maslow's hierarchy, right? It's
exactly,
basic needs.
exactly.
If we don't have adequate food or shelter, that obviously becomes all encompassing to try to address. But if we've got those basic things, which you know, frankly, in America, there are people that suffer, and I work a lot with the homeless and everything else. But um, truthfully, there's no reason anyone wouldn't have those things. Like it's just, well, there's a lot of poor choices that go into things and bad circumstances and everything else. But at the end of the day, we're in an abundant world.
Right, right. And so having that gratitude means you know contentment. I mean, we've used the word success a couple of times, but I'm interested in what's the definition of success. And, and lots of people, that definition has to do with stuff rather than emotion and or feeling. Um, my definition of success, I've told you this before, when I graduated college, I never had any kind of career aspiration or monetary aspiration. I just wanted to try and maximize the number of days I would get out of bed looking forward to going to work. Because I knew that work was going to be a large part of my life, and I wanted my life to be something I look forward to. And over the years, I think I've averaged probably 80% of the days. And by the way, of the 20%, quite a few are at East Sky.
Yes, but it made you so much more complete with your talent stack, having
No question.
lived in the
No question.
entrepreneurial duress.
No question. And it gave me a great knowledge of myself. No more startups.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think maybe some people might ask, well, all right, that sounds good, but how do I get to gratitude? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. And it sounds silly. I mean, you'll hear, if you've ever been to therapy, and they say things like write a letter to your
Yep.
whoever. right? You don't have to send it, you just write it, the act of writing. And so with gratitude, start writing the things you have to be thankful for. And I mean everything. So the things I mentioned, right? Most people listening to this, I'm guessing, have most of those things. And they can add other things, right? They
Yeah.
can add the fact that they might be smart, the fact that they are able to appreciate humor, the fact that they can actually choose where they want to go on vacation, um, the fact that their car runs and drives without worrying about breaking down. Whatever it is, my point is, when you write that down and you start thinking about everything, you realize, my God, there's all of those things. And then Buddha had a saying, he said, don't abandon what you have, abandon what you have not.
Yeah.
Right. And so once you literally make a list of all these things you have to be thankful for. I mean, I've told everyone in England the best public holiday in the world by far is Thanksgiving, because of the idea that you give thanks. Now again, I give thanks every single day, but that plus of course you don't have to buy gifts or send cards,
Right.
which is key. But Thanksgiving is a freaking fantastic holiday. Plus,
Yeah.
I love to eat, so you know.
There is that. It is. No,
That's how. But that's what I say. If you write it down, you'll see
yeah.
how much there is.
No, I think that's a great mechanism, and you know, when I was going through my reconciliation with childhood trauma and things that I was dealing with, I got to where I knew I had to forgive everybody, including myself. And one of the tools that someone gave me, actually Danny, a good friend of mine who was on the podcast, was to write a letter to each person that you know did things that I felt were wrong and harmed me or harm people, and write a letter to them. Start out with all the things they did and use every swear word and anything you want to say to them. Write it and then tear it up. Then write another one. Then write another one, and then write another one. Repeat, repeat, repeat until you get to a letter of forgiveness. And it was very effective for me. It worked really well. Usually, like by the third letter, I was like, "Oh, okay. What happened to them? What happened to them that caused them to do what they did? Like they must have been abused. They must have had this thing or that thing." But it was powerful technique, and I think
Uh-huh.
it works for forgiveness. Which, by the way, you can't hold grudges and be unforgiving and be in gratitude at the same time very easily. Like so, you have to clear that shit too. But I think that your thing about writing letters of thanks, I mean, it's true, and it doesn't have to go to anyone. You just
No,
write them.
yeah, and again, writing. And by the way, if you want to really sink in, write, don't type.
Oh yeah,
You know, yeah, get the old ballpoint pen or fountain pen or pencil, but don't erase. And then start physically writing. Yeah,
yeah,
but that's that's it. That's it. And then add to it or reread it and reread it every day. That can be your prayer. And again, I'm not talking about religion. Um, Thanksgiving every day. They just don't eat like it.
yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. Um, yeah, I think that equation is kind of cool. It's kind of fun way to look at desire and looking at the numerator instead of the denominator, right? Or wait, which
No,
is
the other way around. Look at
right?
the denominator.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean giving up on dreams or not having aspirations or not wanting to achieve things. Like those can still be a part of it. It's just the attachment to it. It's got to be like, yeah, okay, I want to do something cool and I'm willing to take some risks to do it, but I'm not attached to the outcome.
Yeah, no, and by the way, I mean, one of the other interesting things about that equation is, unfortunately, for a lot of people, as that numerator increases, right, the denominator increases faster,
Mm.
right? So I get the Porsche, but all of a sudden I want a customized Pagani Zonda, right? So my $240,000 car all of a sudden is a $10 million car. Um, I get my house on the shore of Lake Como, looking at you, George Clooney, and all of a sudden I want a house, the house that's the highest house on the peak in Hong Kong. Some people might think the Lake Como house is better, but whatever. But the point is that the denominator can increase faster than the numerator. And then you and I both know, you more than me, several billionaires. I don't think they're happier than us.
Yeah, no, I'm around people with great success, great wealth all the time, and this is one of the things that I'm quite optimistic and hopeful about because I see an awakening. I see more and more of my friends who have been really successful questioning what's next. I've got this. Is it making the next 10 million or whatever it is, whatever the number is, uh, and they're coming to that realization that no, like there's more to life. There's more to meaning. It's like what and I see that happening what widely in leadership, certainly in the kind of CEO, founder, entrepreneurial world. I don't know about corporate world as much, but the independent business people that I know are working hard on that stuff, and I think that's really a positive thing because one person who has a company with hundreds of employees can have a really big impact on this planet if they get their shit together, if they are in peace, if they get this formula right, and their presence, um, uh, their own inner peace will have huge effects on all the people that work for them, that work around them, that their customers, their all the people around them. If they can get to that, so that's kind of my a little bit the mission of this thing is those that are on some path of trying to figure this out, this big question of like why am I here, what is it that really would make me happy. There are tools, there are ways to do it. And one of the things I learned in this process is we operate with like I don't know 5% of our brain power, maybe give or take. There's different people have different percentages, but either way it's a really tiny piece, and 95% is our subconscious, and that subconscious is quite powerful. And so how do we reconcile that? Well, it's about cleaning up that subconscious and putting the things in you want. The only thing we control is what goes in. It's the same thing with AI or computer coding, whatever. Garbage in, garbage out. If all you put is garbage in your brain, then your subconscious is just receiving that. It
Well,
doesn't
and don't,
have discernment.
right, but don't forget, I don't know how this actually ties in, but at least 50% of what goes in is keeping stuff out.
Yeah,
So right now, right, think of all the data points around you, right? To the screen's left, to the screen's right, you can see in your peripheral vision, but you're ignoring them, right? Hopefully you just focused on me. But and me, you, obviously. But sound, noise, visual stuff, smells, all of that is data that's impacting all of your senses all of the time. And so literally filtering or ignoring or rejecting stuff sort of before it gets in is as important as seeking and finding and actively accepting the stuff you want to get in.
no, it's a great point. It's where our focus is, because you're right. There's beauty all around us, no matter where you are. I happen to be in, this is
Well, you have beauty in front of you and behind you.
yeah, but it's everywhere, and it's like if all you do is mentate, if you spend all your time in your ego mind, um, and this is not the thinking we were talking about earlier, rehashing things, replaying things in your head about the past, or mentating about some future thing that you're anxious about. If you spend all your time in that, you're not present to be present with everything that's freaking amazing around you. And all anxiety and fear is about mentating about the future and thinking about what might happen, could happen, will happen. All depression is pretty much mentating and thinking about the past. And so, you can't be in depressed and you can't be anxious if you're in the present moment. It's impossible.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes logical sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's the power of now, whatever, but it's a mindfulness practice that I think the East has done a much better job in general culturally of people understanding mindfulness. But I think it's catching on. People are understanding it, but literally just being able to be present and not let your mind is like an untrained pet that if you let it go, it's just going to keep going. It's like we have like 90,000 thoughts a day, and until we get an understanding of that and we realize those thoughts are not us and that we actually have control over which thoughts we put our energy behind, you can't stop the thoughts. What you can decide is where to put your energy. If you have a negative thought or memory, or you think about, how am I going to pay the rent or pay some thing, you can choose to put more energy into that thought, or to say, swipe left, swipe right. Like, let's give me something better. I love that technique. You can
well,
literally, say to your brain, bring me something better, until you get to a gratitude or some positive thought.
I mean, I've got a very simple sort of demonstration of that. No matter what's going on in my life, anything that objectively someone might say is good or bad, um, including all the times when I was unemployed, um, uh, when my head hits the pillow, I'm asleep in 7 minutes. And I hear lots of people talk about, oh, I can't turn my brain off. I can't sleep. I can't get it to. It's like, I can turn my brain off.
Yeah.
I can make it. I go to, the swipe right to something pleasant, nice, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think you came with that ability. It was something that, like, was a little bit of you. You were innately like that.
yeah, my people generally have said that yes, I'm generally calm. The my probably my favorite poem, is If by Rudyard Kipling, and it's one particular line. If you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, the world is yours and everything in it.
Yeah, love
Um,
that.
and it's true. I don't get too excited, positively or negatively. I appreciate things. I'm one of the most happy people I know, but but yeah, it's yeah. I don't get too excited about things that are inconsequential.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to be, Andrew Lobo. Anything else you want to share?
I'm excited. I'm excited about this podcast.
Well, that's great. Well, look, we're
Um,
having fun. I think
it's,
I think we're reaching who it needs to reach. We're the audience is growing, and it's I know I hear from much less people than it's touching, but the people I do hear from, I'm getting tremendous feedback, and my idea was, if it could help, if we can help one person, then it's worth doing, and I think we're helping people, think about these issues, and just in a calm way. It's like, it's non-judgmental. Like, everyone's got their issues, everyone's got challenges. No matter, I don't care who you are, I don't care what it looks like, how successful someone looks like. They all have the same human issues, and when you can be present, when you can be in gratitude, and there are techniques to get there. If you're not there, it's very much at anyone's grasp if they choose to do it, if they want to do it.
yeah. Now you asked if there was anything else I wanted to say, or you're about to ask that.
Yeah,
I got two things that are, I don't know if they're related or not, but they're important to me. The first is this: There's a very, very, very common phrase that people use all the time that I absolutely despise and always have. That phrase is, you have to earn my respect.
Mm.
It's like, no, every single person I meet has my respect at the point of being met. What they have to earn is my disrespect to their behavior things. And I just think saying you have to earn my respect is one of the more narcissistic things that any person could say. That's one. The second is lots of people confuse confidence with arrogance. And it can be hard, I guess, to sort of tell the difference. I think it's really very, very easy. You'll rarely, if ever, hear an arrogant person say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You just taught me something. Things like that, because they perceive all of those things as weaknesses, when in fact, they're actually strengths. There's a confident person has no problem saying, oh, I didn't know that. Cool. Right? You've learned something.
Yeah.
A confident person's happy to apologize. They did something wrong, I'll apologize. So just pay attention to people, what they're saying. You can tell.
Yeah, I really resonate with both of those, and I think it's when we show up with judgment, which would be, hey, prove your prove your worth, prove your that I should
You're
respect.
worthy of my respect.
Yeah, we show up with judgment, we shut down our ability to see. And every time you walk into something, it's like going into an argument or a discussion. If all you see is your point and you're not open to really hearing and listening to what are all the different angles of this thing, you miss all kinds of information. And when I show up as a completely neutral observer and I'm like, I'm here, this is another human, what is this person telling me verbally and non-verbally? How do I receive information from this person? I get so much more out of it than when I come in with, oh, you're this, you're that, pigeonholing people or whatever.
Yeah, I read this book about 12 years ago, very thin book. It was about information. I read the first paragraph and I shut the book because what I read in that first paragraph was so true and profound that I knew the rest of the book wasn't going to, would be downhill. So I literally didn't read anymore. What those words was now most people read for confirmation, not information.
Mm.
And that is, well, profound because I think it's unfortunately true. Some people don't read just for confirmation, but people talk about echo chambers, they talk about this, that, and the other. But it's like, if the thing I'm reading agrees or confirms or reinforces a pre-existing belief, I'm reading it. If it doesn't, I'm not.
Yeah, I think that applies to all aspects of life in some ways, but showing up with a childlike mind, what am I going to discover today?
Mhm.
Whether it's at the office or it's out on a hike, which I had a great hike today, and I wasn't trying to solve anything. I just was appreciative of being out hiking and just experiencing it. It was just fantastic, which I highly
Yeah,
recommend everyone do.
I'm not going to hike in the suburbs of Atlanta. Thank you very much.
A little walk, a little stroll around your neighborhood. That counts. All right, Andrew. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you taking the
Thank
time to do
you.
this. And yeah, we'll get this episode out soon. And if Andrew, you do like consulting, human capital consulting, strategic consulting for companies, groups. If they want to get a hold of you, is there a website?
They can DM me on LinkedIn, or my email is amalobo@gmail.com.
Yeah, and you have a website too, right?
It's clarifyhrconsulting.com.
All right. Well, that's a way to get you. Ignore the website. Just the content behind it is high value.
Yes, yes.
All right, brother. Thank you.
All right, you take it easy. That was fun.